Hey Bobby, what's up?
Not much, bestie. I'm just calling to let you know that I decided to get rid of Genie Plus.
That's great, and you're fixing what guests don't like about it, right? 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 Hi, I'm James from Guide to WDW, and because my brain is broken in a very specific way, I spend way too much of my free time thinking about how to skip the lines at Disney World. So when Disney announced that they were replacing Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lane with Lightning Lane Multi-Pass and Single Pass, my mind has been occupied with nothing else. Sorry, precious memories of my children growing up. There's no room for you in here. I have booking windows to figure out. I just released 2 videos explaining everything that's new with New Lightning Lane and answering your questions, like the rules and the facts of how it works. But now it's time to answer the biggest question of all. Are these changes any good? I've seen opinions on this out there ranging from this is the worst thing ever to saying it's awesome. Carly Weissel, who is a genuinely great and delightful theme park journalist, said it's a step in the right direction. But is it though? My family started Guide to WDW.com in 1999, and since then we've seen the pros and cons of each of Disney's line skipping systems. I can already tell where New Lightning Lane is much improved and where it's way worse. So in this video, I'm breaking down everything about Lightning Lane Multi-Pass and Single Pass from the guest perspective and telling you if it's better or worse. Because for a certain type of guest, this is a huge upgrade. But for many people, this is either going to be a lateral move or objectively much worse. Let's dive in. Starting with the name. So the new naming is better than the old naming. Genie Plus never made sense as branding, unless your greatest wish was to wake up at 7 a.m. and then miss out on Slinky Dog Dash because your hotel's internet connection was too slow. It's cleaner that everything's just called Lightning Lane now, and the names do make a bit more sense. Lightning Lane Multi-Pass gives you access to many rides. Lightning Lane Single Pass is one ride at a time. But the naming is not good. They don't convey anything about the level of attraction that you're getting. As Brian from Park Lore tweeted, it's understandable if someone thinks that they could buy just a single pass to get on any of the rides that are available with multi-pass. Like, oh, I really want to go on Tiana, can't I just buy a single pass for that? No, that's only available with multi-pass. Lightning Lane Single Pass is just for the biggest and most popular rides. Plus, there's no good way to shorthand it. No one is going to say that ride is available with Lightning Lane Multi-Pass, TM. They'll say things like, oh, Space Mountain is a multi-pass ride. Tron is a single pass ride. Oh, like single rider? No, not single rider, that's different than single pass. It might seem nitpicky, but guest confusion was a huge issue with Genie Plus. And the new naming will not help with that. If Disney is insistent on having 2 different levels of Lightning Lane rides, the name should communicate these distinctions more clearly to someone who's going to the parks for the first time. How about this, Disney? You should have a name for the regular rides that you buy in a bundle, and a name for the super premium rides that you can buy only a la carte. Like how about Fastpass and Fastpass Plus? Just saying. The naming is an upgrade over Genie Plus, but it's still bad. 2. Complexity. One of the biggest knocks against Genie Plus was how complicated it was. There were too many different names and rules to just easily grasp. I can't believe it's possible, but Disney figured out a way to make Lightning Lane even more complicated. You can blame Keith. He's Disney's Chief Complexity Officer. His job is to make sure that nothing is just simple at Disney. His accomplishments include park pass reservations, 2 p.m. park hopping, and the virtual queue. But his greatest achievement yet might be Lightning Lane Multi-Pass. Before I get into the questionable decisions Disney made here, I do want to acknowledge where things are improved and friendlier to the guest. Disney removed the multiple park option, and park hopping is just baked in if you have a park hopper ticket. Everything becomes available at the same time, so at 7 a.m. you can book both single pass and multi-pass for the day in one transaction. Also, the rules of getting new Lightning Lanes is the easiest to explain of Disney systems yet. You can always have 3 Lightning Lane slots available to you. Once you use one, you can refill that empty slot with an available ride. Those are 3 big improvements. But now, let's let Keith cook. When you book depends on if you're a Disney Resort guest or not. 7 days ahead of check-in for official Disney resorts, and 3 days ahead of your first park day for off-site guests. You can book your full vacation one sitting if you're staying at a Disney resort, or if you're staying off-site and have a ticket that doesn't need a reservation. If you're staying off-site and your ticket needs reservations, like a military discount ticket, you can still book 3 days ahead of time, but you can only book 1 day at a time. If you're an annual pass holder and staying off-site, you can also only book 1 day at a time, but no matter what, make sure you have a park pass reservation reservation, or it's a good to go day, otherwise you can only get Lightning Lanes past 2 p.m. unless it's Magic Kingdom on the weekends. For Lightning Lane Multi-Pass, attractions are broken up into tiers, but only in 3 out of the 4 parks. You can book 1 ride from Tier 1 and 2 rides from Tier 2, or 3 rides from Tier 2 if you don't want any Tier 1 rides. Oh, and tiers don't apply for same-day Lightning Lane reservations, and don't even get me started with split stays, which Disney itself describes as, quote, very confusal, end quote. It doesn't need to be this complicated. The levels of exceptions, if, then, no, but is just exhausting. The upgrades I mentioned earlier are all quality of life improvements for sure once you're using the system. But this complexity is all up front. You need to go through a flowchart just to figure out if you're able to buy the thing. Also, like I said earlier, the naming doesn't convey that there are actually 2 different Lightning Lane systems with different rules that don't actually interact with each other. And this is all in addition to the rules surrounding Virtual Queue, which, based on the comments that I get, a lot of people don't realize is a completely separate line system. Disney desperately needs to streamline and simplify the guest experience, and boy, they did not do that with Multi-Pass. Big downgrade. Okay, so far I've been pretty down on the new system. Let's find a ray of sunshine by getting more sleep. 3. Waking up at 7 a.m. One of the biggest complaints that people had about Genie Plus was that you had to wake up every single day of your vacation at 7 a.m. to have a chance to get the hardest to get rides. Fortunately, Multi-Pass and Single Pass fixes that for most guests. You'll still have to wake up before 7 a.m., but only for 1 day ahead of your vacation. If you're staying at a Disney resort, or if you're staying off-site and buy a ticket that doesn't need reservations, you can book your entire trip's worth of Lightning Lanes in one sitting. If you're staying off-site and have a ticket that needs reservations, you can still book 3 days ahead of time, but you can only book 1 day at a time. So you're still waking up at 7 a.m. multiple days, just shifted 3 days earlier. Which is actually worse, because 3 days ahead of time is just an awkward amount of time to think of and plan. Quick, what are you doing in 3 days? I barely know what day today is. Plus, the whole point of waking up right at 7 a.m. was to get the hardest to get reservations, like Slinky Dog or Ratatouille. If you're staying off-site, you're already at a disadvantage for that. That brings me to my next point, but being able to book multiple days ahead of your trip is an upgrade. It doesn't completely remove the 7 a.m. wake-up call because Virtual Queue is still around, but it is better. 4. Resort guests. With the old system, all guests were on equal footing, for the most part. Resort guests had very little advantages. They could purchase individual Lightning Lanes at 7 a.m. instead of park opening, and that was it. That completely changes with Lightning Lane Multi-Pass and Single Pass. Thanks to that head start for booking, resort guests now have a huge advantage for the hardest to get Lightning Lanes. And because you can buy for the length of your stay, the longer your stay is, the bigger your advantage is at the end of your trip. We're not exactly sure how this will specifically shake out, but I bet it will be pretty similar to Fastpass Plus, where most of the rides were available to most guests. But rides like Flight of Passage and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train would sell out more than 60 days ahead of time with Fastpass Plus. To get on the biggest rides, you either had to be a resort guest booking as early as possible, or get really lucky booking a cancellation later. Now, the scale of this is going to be different because it's not a free perk, but I really wouldn't be surprised to see if Slinky Dog or Tiana would basically require a Disney resort reservation to be able to book. And even if you have a resort reservation, the most in-demand multi-pass rides could very well be sold out a week or more ahead of time. I don't have an issue with Disney giving their resort guests perks, but I wish it wasn't a head start like this. I think the whole system would be improved if the booking rules applied the same to everyone, but Multi-Pass was just included as a resort perk, and off-site guests had to purchase it. It would solve the flowchart issue, plus provide a really attractive perk for all guests going to Disney resorts, not just the ones clued in enough to know about the 7-day versus 3-day booking window. Getting to skip the lines for free is something that any guest can understand the value of intuitively versus getting to book reservations earlier. And in this scenario, guests staying off-site would have the same chance to get the hard-to-get rides instead of now having to pay the same price to be put at a disadvantage. But that's not how it works now. So if you're staying at a Disney resort, this is a big upgrade. For everyone else, it's a downgrade, but we'll see how much of a downgrade. Actually, I lied. There are certain Disney resort guests where this is a huge downgrade, and that is for international guests. I've harped on this in my last couple of videos, and I'll keep harping on this because I think this is one of the worst decisions that Disney has made in recent memory. Currently, in order to pre-book lightning lanes, you need to physically be inside the US or Canada. If you're outside of those countries, you basically have to wait until you get to Orlando to start booking, which for most guests will either be the day before they go into the parks or the same day, which puts them way behind US and Canadian guests. So it doesn't matter if you're staying concierge level at a deluxe resort, you still can't book ahead of your arrival to the US. Now, I've gotten some comments about this defending Disney, saying, oh, they're working to fix this, or it's because of taxes or different app store rules in different countries, so what do you expect them to do? I expect them to figure it out before they roll out a whole new system. I've seen so many comments from international guests who are furious, and rightly so. Many of these guests have booked their very lengthy, very expensive vacations many months ago. I got one comment from someone who booked a year and a half ago, and suddenly right before their trip, Disney is changing the whole Lightning Lane system in a way that makes it much worse for international guests without any clue when or if it's going to be fixed. And Disney could find ways to make this work, like give away just for international guests to buy multi-pass vouchers, or a ticket add-on through your resort or your travel agent. So when you buy Lightning Lane, you're just using up one of your vouchers instead of making a credit card payment, circumventing the whole app purchase issue. Even if Disney fixes it today, it's still really bad that the decision makers ever thought that this was an acceptable way to ship a new product. That they couldn't predict that guests who go to the greatest lengths and many who spend the most amount of money would see this restriction and feel that Disney doesn't want their business anymore. It's not just bad for international guests, it's bad for Disney, as those guests would be among the most likely to buy the new Lightning Lane system for every day of their extended trips. Nobody forced Disney to change Lightning Lane right now. There's a lot about this rollout that feels rushed in a way that doesn't consider the guest experience. Like how they didn't wait to roll this out during the slow season like late August or September. But the most ill-considered decision was to announce this without a way for international guests to pre-book. It's a really bad look and the biggest possible downgrade. Okay, I feel myself getting pulled into the negativity vortex, so let's talk some sugar about how great new Lightning Lane is for planners. If you're a planner, this is probably the biggest possible upgrade. With Genie Plus, it was a mystery which rides you could get, plus you didn't even know how much it would cost until the same day. Now not only can you see the price ahead of time, you can pre-book 3 multi-pass rides and 2 single-pass rides per day. So if you have the budget, you can guarantee up to 5 big rides per day. Plus, you can see which rides are available for multi-pass before you make the purchase, and you can select from any of the available time slots rather than the soonest available time. So if you're the type of person who puts their whole trip into a spreadsheet, you're gonna love this. Just like you probably love Fastpass Plus. If you visit Disney World once a year or less frequently, it feels reassuring to be able to know that you have your biggest must-do rides guaranteed with a short wait before you even head to Florida. Big upgrade to planning. But there's a flip side to that. Number 7, flexibility. Say what you will about Genie Plus, and we have, but its biggest strength was flexibility. It worked well for guests with last-minute trips and who value spontaneity. Because everything was same day, you could decide the morning of if you were going to purchase Genie Plus or not, and if you had a park hopper ticket that didn't need reservations, you could choose which park you were visiting that day based on which Lightning Lanes were available or just how you were feeling. You could book things early in the day, or you could stack Genie slots in the afternoon. Lightning Lane Multipass removes a lot of that flexibility. Now, it's much better for last-minute trips than Fastpass Plus was. Fastpass Plus had a ridiculous 30 to 60 day reservation window. I once decided to go to Disney World about a month ahead of time, which isn't exactly spur of the moment, but I couldn't get any of the biggest fast passes because I didn't plan my trip early enough. The 7-day reservation window is much better for this, and I think that's a reasonable amount of time. But if you want to use Lightning Lane, you're going to have to pick which parks you want to visit on each day, and that choice is non-refundable. You can change your mind about which park you want to visit, but you'll have to pay the price difference if you want to change to a more expensive park. If you change to a less expensive park, you don't get the difference refunded. So if you buy Magic Kingdom or Hollywood Studios, you won't want to change to one of the cheaper parks and waste that money. Plus, unless you're 7 days out, if you change which park you're going to go to, you're going to have a harder time getting good Lightning Lane slots. And anyway, if you score a Slinky Dog Lightning Lane, there's no chance you're going to want to change which park you're visiting anyway. Another way that the system is less flexible is that it really incentivizes you to book your Lightning Lanes early in the day, because you can make new Lightning Lane reservations as soon as you use your first reservation. Stacking Lightning Lanes in the afternoon is much less effective because of the attraction tiers. If you want the most value with Lightning Lane Multipass, you better know which park you're visiting on each morning. One of the things that guests hated most over the past few years was the Park Pass reservation system, because you had to choose which park you would visit first each day. Modifications were possible, but this whole system added a lot of friction if you needed to change your plans for any reason. So people were really excited when Disney announced that they were getting rid of reservations for date-based tickets, which are what most people buy. Well, Lightning Lane Multipass is basically a new way to get people to lock in which park they're visiting first. Yes, Disney brought back park reservations and figured out a way to get you to pay for them. Good job, Keith. Flexibility is a big downgrade. Number of rides you can get. Disney says on its official website that most guests can expect to get 2 to 3 Lightning Lanes per day on average with Genie Plus. So for the average guest, Lightning Lane Multipass is an upgrade since it guarantees 3 rides at the minimum. Now, if you're someone watching Guide to WDW videos, you are getting way more Lightning Lanes per day anyway. Yes, Genie Plus stacking is now much less desirable, but I'm certain that this system is going to have its own advanced techniques that will allow you to maximize the number of rides you can get on. I'm already working on a multi-pass masterclass that will lay out all those tips in one place once I can see the system in action. So be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss it. But this is definitely an upgrade for the average guest. Whoops, did I say definitely? Not so fast, me from the past. This is James from the future, and yeah, I got this wrong. Lightning Lane Multipass has been operational over the past few days, and same-day attraction availability so far has been, how should I put it, not good. Rides that used to be available late into the day with Genie Plus, like Toy Story Mania and Haunted Mansion, are now selling out much earlier in the day, or practically have no same-day availability at all. Yes, Multipass has a higher floor with 3 guaranteed rides, but the same-day availability being so sparse lowers the ceiling on the number of Lightning Lanes you can get in a day. It's still a bit of a developing story as more data comes in, and as Disney adjusts when they release additional Lightning Lane slots, but I have to change this to a downgrade for now. And part of this availability issue has to do with a really weird decision Disney made: the attraction lineup. Disney made the strange move of removing a lot of attractions from Lightning Lane Multipass. This includes the Festival of Fantasy Parade, Enchanted Tales with Belle, the Animation Experience, and every single meet and greet. Those meet and greets were a great get for Genie Plus, as it saved you a lot of time in a very boring, slow-moving line. Why Disney removed them is beyond me, since they already have the lines and the signage built. It really wouldn't surprise me if these came back, but this is for sure a downgrade. Which brings me to my final thoughts. Is Lightning Lane Multipass an upgrade or a downgrade? It all depends on what type of guest you are, because there are some winners and some losers with the system. I brought up that Carly Weissel tweet at the beginning not to drag her for being wrong or anything, but to illustrate a point. Carly is very knowledgeable about these systems and visiting from the West Coast. I know from personal experience that 7 a.m. wake-up call is brutal with jet lag. So for someone like her, this is a step in the right direction. This is a big upgrade. If you're a planner staying at a Disney resort with the budget for Lightning Lane every day, you're the biggest winner here. You get to book everything ahead of your trip and have the biggest chance on getting on the best rides. If you're staying off-site and have a date-based ticket, you win some, you lose some. It'll be nice not having to wake up at 7 a.m. every day, but you might have a harder time getting a Lightning Lane for the rides where it will make the biggest difference. If you have little kids, you also lose because meet and greets were dropped, and having less flexibility most likely will be the hardest for you. Sometimes it's just impossible to get out the door when you were hoping to with little kids. If you're an annual pass holder staying off-site, if you're a local, or if you're an international guest, you're the biggest loser of all. Just when it comes to the system, I still love you. And I think this fundamentally exposes the whole problem with the Lightning Lane system as it exists right now. All of these winners and losers are people who are paying extra into the system on top of a very expensive theme park ticket. So you can pay up to $40 per person a day and still lose if you're staying at a good neighbor hotel, or if you decide, we'd rather take it easy this morning at the resort. Too bad, a week ago you got a Remy reservation, so suck it up kiddos. I know you're tired, but we're going on the rat ride. With Fastpass Plus, the complexity and resort guests being at a big advantage was a bit forgivable when it was an included perk. Now you're all paying for the business class upgrade, but it turns out they oversold the number of seats, so you may end up in coach anyway, and no matter what, you have to assemble the chair yourself. Even if they're never going to make it free again, Disney desperately needs to simplify Lightning Lane. Yes, this complexity is good for people like me who make videos explaining how it works, but it's bad for almost anyone else. And because this new version is probably the most complicated yet, there's no way this is anything other than a downgrade in my book, a step in the wrong direction. Even though it's technically good for me, I'd personally rather the experience be better for everyone. One set of rules for all guests paying for this upgrade would be a good start. Let me know what you think. Do you prefer Lightning Lane Multipass, Genie Plus, or are you like me and still clinging on to your paper Fastpass tickets? And if you have any questions about the new Lightning Lane system, let me know. And check out this video here where I answer over 20 of your biggest questions about Lightning Lane Multipass. This has been James from Guide to WDW. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.